Tech Rescue Committee came up with a training plan to where they're doing a review or a training on each of the tech rescue disciplines at least once every 3 years. And we rolled this elevator training out initially to the department back in 2013, so we're 4 years into it now. And so we figured it was time to get an update and a refresher going. So in those 4 years, not a ton has changed as far as what we're doing on elevator rescues. But what has changed is the type of elevators that we're encountering. And so we're gonna go pretty in depth into that. And we're fortunate to be here at CSU today, where the 2 elevators that we get to train on are the MRL style elevators, the machine roomless elevators. And that's really the main elevator that's going in new installations throughout the city. And it has been giving us a few fits, just because 4 years ago when this program was rolled out, I was told by Tyson Krupp, who services a majority of the elevators in our district, that there are 0 MRLs in our district. And 4 years later, virtually every new installation is an MRL. Again, doesn't affect our rescue sequence, but does pose a few challenges that we're going to address today and hopefully help you overcome. So we're going to examine the current elevator operations. I'm always open for suggestions, stuff like that that's working, things upon, things that you're encountering out there, stories that you have on what went good, what went bad, challenges you had. And so we'll have some opportunity when we get up to the hands-on portion for you guys to share those experiences. We're going to review the elevator terminology. Most of you guys, this is going to be exactly that, a review. And so we're going to blast through it. You're probably going to want me to slow down because I'm going to be talking like the Micro Machine Man, but I'm going to just try to get through it so we can maximize our hands-on time. But we're going to explain the differences between the traction, the hydraulic, and as I alluded to, the MRLs. We're going to outline some proposed OD changes. So again, every 3 years, the OD committee comes out to a project lead and they say, hey, here's your OD. Is there anything that needs to be changed in it, revamped, what have you? And so I got that email earlier, or late last year, and wanted to get your guys' input. Because on ladder 5, on C shift, you know, we're running a small fraction of the overall elevator calls. I know you guys are running just as many, if not more, and so I wanted to get input from the entire department, the online folks who are running these calls, to see if there's anything we can clean up in the OD, things that don't make sense, things that need to be added. And so I will ask for your input on that. If you don't have it, you know, during the classroom session, after it, if something triggers in your head or when we're upstairs training, by all means, either shoot me an email or let me know any proposed changes that you have, because it's important that we keep those fresh and realistic to what we're doing on the streets. And then if we have time, and we've been running short on time because we're trying, like a lot of these classes we do, we've got so much material that we're trying to compress into a short time frame. If we have time, we're going to demonstrate a rescue recall sequence, just run an evolution. What we've been finding in a lot of the other classes is it's more beneficial just to get you guys time with hands-on, the actual mechanics of opening doors and picking locks and understanding the systems, because once you know that and you understand, you've got a good grasp on how these rescues should be run, the scenario itself kind of puts itself together. So we'll talk through it at a minimum. So here's what we're here to do. We're just going to scratch the surface. I want you guys to be comfortable with the components of the elevator systems that we're going to be interfacing with, how they work, what they do, but you don't need to know all the intricacies of an elevator. We're not going to become elevator technicians in this class. Those guys go to school for many years to do what they do, and they are the pros, and they do play an integral part in these calls. They are very important, and we'll address how to incorporate them into these calls. And the biggest thing is we want you to understand how to do this and how to do it safely. And so we want to give you enough knowledge to perform it not only expediently but also safely. All right, so this gets into the terminology, and like I said, I'm going to blast through this because for all of you guys in here, this is review, and it's going to be self-explanatory. The elevator is obviously just the whole system. It's a system designed to move things and people from one level to another. The hoistway is the shaft in which the elevator car travels. It's referred to as the elevator shaft. We call it the hoistway. The hoistway doors are those first doors that we're going to encounter from the lobby, and they're our first hurdle that we're going to have to overcome. These can sometimes be the most frustrating part of an elevator rescue. Sometimes they're not so bad. The elevator car is the car where the passengers or the equipment or what have you travels in up and down the hoistway. It travels on rails up and down the hoistway. Car doors, from our perspective, they're going to be the second doors that we encounter and our second challenge that we're going to have to overcome to effect a rescue from people in people in a stalled elevator car. And so I just want you guys to take a mental snapshot of this silver or this gold rod right here coming off of this clutch system. So just take a mental snapshot. When we get upstairs, we'll talk more about it and it'll make more sense, but it'll just show you a different variation than what we'll see upstairs. And the car door operator is just the motor on top of the car that operates the car doors. In the older style elevators, when you kill power to the elevators, there's some resistance in that car door operator, and it kind of makes that elevator, the car door itself, hard to open. If you reach up there and you're able to spin that motor, it'll give you that mechanical advantage to open the door. On these newer elevators, it's not an issue, and you'll see that upstairs. The interlock. This is one of the most challenging things. Again, it goes in with the hoistway door. It sits right on the hoistway side of the hoistway door, and this is what we're going to have to overcome to access that hoistway and to open that hoistway door. These can be very frustrating because I wish I could tell you that you use, this key in this hole and you turn it counterclockwise and it's going to open the door every time. It's just not the case. You have to size up the door, match your escutcheon tube, the little hole that's in the door, to the style of key that you have on your ring, and you're either going to have to lift it, twist it, turn it counterclockwise, clockwise. It's just going to be, unfortunately, a trial and error thing. But what we're ultimately trying to do is, this is one portion of the interlock and it goes into a box here, and what that does is it does two things. It's part of the safety system circuit, and then it's also what keeps the hoistway door locked so that you can't just open the hoistway door and plummet to your death down the elevator hoistway. And so what we're doing in one variety or the other is we're disengaging that by lifting it up, and we're able to slide the door open. As this picture illustrates here, that's your key right there. I know it's a little difficult to see, but you're interfacing directly with the pickup rollers, and you're going to hear me refer to pickup rollers on numerous occasions. These are the pickup rollers right here, and they're part of the hoistway door. And so by interfacing with those pickup rollers, we're going to disengage that interlock and be able to open those hoistway doors. And I'm going to go back just one more slide real quick to show you where that interface happens. So there are two different styles of doors, the picture you saw before with the pickup rollers and this car door, but the function is the same. So your pickup rollers are going to lie right within that clutch when everything is in alignment, when the car is within the landing zone. And when those pickup rollers interface with that clutch, as the car door opens, the hoistway door opens as well. And so then once you get past the hoistway door, you get that open, you're feeling pretty good about yourself. Then you come to the car door, and I'm sure we've all done it, where you go to open the car door and you get it open 6 inches and it stops. And then that becomes frustrating too, because you're pulling on it, these people are reaching their hands out trying to get out, and it becomes quite frustrating. What you're encountering there is the restrictor. So the restrictor is on the car door, the track of the car door, and it's designed to not allow the people inside the car to get outside the car. So before restrictors were there, when people would get stalled in an elevator, they could open the car door, get out in the hoistway and on top of the car. Or, little rapscallions would get up there and they'd surf the elevator cars up and down. And those can be frustrating, and hopefully we can go over some tips on how to overcome those, because they're a lot like the interlock. They're all different shapes, all different sizes, all different functions, but hopefully we can go through a few tips to help you troubleshoot that. The next one is the machine room. The machine room is one of the most vital things in these elevator rescues. We have to locate and access the machine room. In the machine room, in a traditional elevator, most of your components for your elevator are going to be in the machine room. And that includes your mainline disconnect, which is the next one. This is what kills the power to the entire elevator system, minus the cab lights and fans. And so this little disconnect, and it's going to look different from machine room to machine room, it leaves the power on for the lights and the fan. So it poses no hazard to us. The last thing we want to do when there's 15 people stuck in an elevator for an hour, they're sweaty, they're angry, they want out of that elevator, is now put them in the dark and shut their fan off. And so we want to leave that one going, just hit the mainline disconnect. The controller. The controller is exactly that. It controls the elevator. So it's got a lot of highly sensitive computer motherboards and all that jazz in there. And it's also highly energized. We have no business being in the controller. We don't need to access it. That's a mechanics playground right there. We stay out of it. So just going back to this mainline disconnect, and I'll get on my soapbox here because I have every class for a few different reasons, and I'll have a few examples when we go upstairs, is when we're performing these rescues for our safety and for the passengers inside that car safety, we need to be securing that mainline disconnect. As with everything, there's going to be that rare exception to the rule, and we can talk a little bit about that upstairs. But when these controllers, so this is just one example, in these controllers, when we took this 3-day class in Vegas, they had big orange signs on the controllers that says leave no jumpers behind. And so I was talking to the mechanics about it. I'm like, what does that mean? And the mechanics can get in there with jumpers and they can manipulate those cars to do whatever they want from there. And then obviously on occasion they would leave those jumpers in and it would override that whole system. And so they put that big orange sign on there so when you close the controller that you remember to take your jumpers out so that you're not overriding the safety system circuit. And so in Fort Collins I haven't seen those, but the same things happen in here, you know. And so that's one thing where the only surefire way is to secure that mainline disconnect. And the other reason I'm passionate about securing the mainline disconnect is we're here for a reason. We go to those elevator cars because that elevator has malfunctioned. And so even though it feels like maybe we went to Westfall or Durwood on multiple occasions, if you think about it, say we even go there once a day, that elevator is going up and down that hoistway probably 1,000 times a day. And if it malfunctions once, there's something wrong with it. And so if there's something wrong with it, I don't want to rely upon solely that safety system circuit to protect us and to protect the people inside. So securing that mainline disconnect is the only surefire way of doing that. All right, so into elevator types. So traction is what Station 1 is going to deal with a lot. A lot of those are traction elevators. They're cable driven. It's called a roped system. You're going to have a traction machine, you're going to have your cables, you're going to have your counterweights, an overspeed governor, and a controller. And so it's similar to some of the components are similar to all of the elevators, but you're going to have some unique challenges here. Typically the machine room is located directly above the hoistway in a penthouse. Not always the case. I know 2 instances of buildings here in Fort Collins that's not the case. The first one, you guys walk right by the pit coming in here. The old elevator here that we're not going to play with today is a traction style elevator that goes up through a change of direction, and then the machine room, it goes down into the pit where the machine room is. And so that metal pit that you probably didn't see walking in is the machine room there. The other one is the Rocky Mountain Bank, or the Rocky Mountain building on Canyon Avenue where Otterbox occupies now. Same sort of system. But typically, doing the size up on these, if it's a high rise, is probably a traction elevator. Your machine room's probably in the penthouse. Hydraulic elevators. Prior to about 4 years ago, you could bank on anything 5 stories and under being a hydraulic elevator. And so they still make up a vast majority of the elevators that we have here in town. And they're just a little bit different than traction elevators in their function. And so it obviously runs on a piston or a plunger that's powered by hydraulic fluid to raise and lower the elevator car in the hoistway. The nice thing about these is the machine room is typically pretty easy to find. It's going to be at the floor level, at main level, first floor, or in the basement near the hoistway. And so, because they're not going to plumb a 3-inch line of hydraulic fluid all the way across the building to power this machine. And so it's probably going to be real near the hoistway. Here is your hydraulic reservoir, and this is your controller here. And those will be in the machine room along with your mainline disconnects. All right, but that brings us to the MRL. So this is going to be the focus of our training today. Again, as far as our recall and rescue sequence, it doesn't change a lot. The biggest challenge that these pose is, by definition, they're machine rooms. But they still have to have a mainline disconnect, they still have to have a controller. And so we need to locate those so that we can safely perform this elevator rescue. And typically, there's two different styles of MRLs, and the first one is illustrated in this picture, and it's also what we'll be dealing with today, and really it's all I've seen in Fort Collins, and it's the traction style MRL. So it's still a traction motor, it's mounted along your hoistway wall, and all your components are contained within the hoistway, aside from the controller, and you're going to have a mainline disconnect somewhere. And so your controller, again, it's got that highly sensitive electrical equipment, it's energized. They're not going to want to put it in the hoistway because the hoistway is dirty, it's dark, it's moist, and all that stuff. And so it's going to be in a location usually adjacent to the traction motor, because again, they're not going to run all these wires and electrical equipment across the building when they can put it adjacent to the hoistway. And so on the traction style, these are top-driven traction style ones, which is the predominant elevator that I've seen here. It's going to be somewhere in close proximity to that motor. And so your motor is going to be up top. So typically, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, because you've been running on more MRLs than I have, but it's going to be a challenge to find, but it's typically going to be at or near the top floor, somewhere near the hoistway. And it may be a little closet, it may be a little hatch this big, it may be a drawer that slides out, it may be a panel that flops down, it could be a number of different things. But just to kind of troubleshoot it, that's typically where they're going to be. But like I said, it can be a challenge. If you roll up on scene of a 5-story building, you don't know the age of it or whatever, and you assume it's a hydraulic, and you do your laps around the first floor in the basement, and you don't find a machine room, then your guess is it's an MRL, and it's probably a top-driven MRL, and you can now go to the top floor and try to locate it. But it can be frustrating, and unfortunately it can be time-consuming to locate these, but it is an important aspect of performing this rescue. So that's your motor, the green thing, centrifugal motor up top there. They can be mounted numerous ways. The predominant one I've seen is exactly that. It's mounted on the sidewall. It's either rope driven or it's steel reinforced belt driven, and there's both of them, but they can be mounted anywhere. They can be mounted on a head beam. Again, they could be bottom driven, so you could have your motor in the pit of the hoistway, but typically you're going to see something very similar to that upper right picture. The traction style MRLs are going to operate very similar to the traditional traction style elevators. You're going to have counterweights, you're going to have overspeed governors, and all of this stuff we'll be able to look at when we get upstairs. They're kind of bridging the gap between hydraulics and traction elevators, and they're used in a lot of the mid-rise. Predominantly, they're the main elevator that's installed in most of these new installations here in Fort Collins. They're cheaper than hydraulic, they're easier to maintain than hydraulic, and they're more condensed than hydraulic. So a lot of these occupancies are going with them. All right, any questions on terminologies or types? Alan, I know you probably haven't had this. Some of this is probably new to you. Do you have any? So the next thing we'll go to, and again, I'm just trying to blast through this as fast as we can because I want to give you guys more time to do the hands-on portion. But we're going to go into the rescue and recall sequence. This hasn't changed. It's the same as it is in the OD, same as it is in the PowerPoint. And for those of you who haven't seen this PowerPoint, this is just a condensed version of what I gave 4 years ago. You can find it on the training website under the Tech Rescue tab, Elevator Rescue. This PowerPoint's there. It outlines the recall and the rescue sequence, and then it also is on this card right here. So I know it's hard to read for some of you older folks in here. You may need to have these young whippersnappers read it to you. There you go. But it's all on this card. And the reason I put it on this card is a quick reference sheet is I look at elevator rescue no different than any tech rescue discipline. If I have a confined space and there's somebody down in the hole, I'm not going to just say, hey Morris, jump down and get that person out. I'm going to go through a systematic approach to safely extricate that person from the situation that they're in. Elevators, the same thing. And so this is a systematic approach that you can do to safely and effectively remove trapped passengers from a stalled elevator car. First thing we want to do is, obviously, like any other call, we're going to want to gain as much information as we can, either from dispatch or when we get there. So a couple ways these work is on CSU property, if they push the call for help button on the elevator, it goes to CSU's dispatch. CSU's dispatch picks it up. They dispatch ThyssenKrupp, which is their service provider. They give them 15 or 30 minutes, I can't remember which one it is. They give them a allotted amount of time to get on scene, and if they don't meet that time frame, then they dispatch PFA. Now, if there's extenuating circumstances or someone's injured or ill or something like that, they're obviously going to dispatch us right away. Anywhere off of CSU property, if they push that call for help button, it goes to whoever is the service provider for that elevator, Otis, Schindler, whoever it is. And then it goes to their dispatch center, they send a technician out. We may never know about that call. We probably won't ever know about that call. How we get dispatched to these automatically is a phone call. And so they call 911, they say, I'm stuck in an elevator, and hopefully the dispatcher is getting some of that critical information. How many people are in the car? Is anyone injured or ill? What floor are you on? You know, all that information that's going to really help us arriving on scene. Once we arrive on scene with the knowledge that we have, we try to locate the car. So if we don't have it from dispatch, we're going to have to go through a few steps to locate the car. The first thing we're going to want to do is access the Knox box, because in that Knox box you should have a fire emergency operations key and you should have a key to the machine room, both of which are going to be really handy when we start performing this rescue. So once you have the key, you're going to attempt to locate the stall car. You can check the hall position indicator. When you guys came in on the lobby there, you could see there was a hall position indicator. You could tell where those cars were on that, on which floor they were on. If that doesn't work or they don't have one, you can attempt to contact the passenger through the hoistway. If it's a high-rise building and they're on the 11th floor, you're probably not going to be able to contact them through the hoistway. The more surefire way, but the little more time-consuming one, is open the hoistway and visualize the car. The one thing we want to do, make sure we do when we do this, is secure that mainline disconnect first. And so I'll kind of go through a sequence when we get to reboot. So I'll step ahead here just for a second. So we're obviously investigating this once we're able to, whether dispatch gave it to us or we're able to make contact with the passengers, we're going to get that information. So I'm going to backtrack just a second here. So you access the lobby. You try the floor call button. It's something that's super simple to do. It takes no time. It's probably not going to work, but it doesn't hurt anything. Hit the floor call button. Maybe that overrides whatever glitch stalled that elevator out, and it'll bring it down to the lobby. If that doesn't work, attempt a phase 1 recall. So a phase 1 recall is designed for firefighter operations in elevator equipped buildings, but we can use it for elevator rescue. And this one does have not a great success rate, but it may work. Everybody's gonna get one of these keys. This was the standard key for a lot of years, so it's gonna work for you in a lot of instances, but it's not going to work for you all the time. Prior to '96, every manufacturer had their own key, their fire emergency operations key, and then I think after like 2012, every manufacturer has their own key. But in between, the FEOK1 was the standard, and so it may or may not work, but you'll have it readily available on your jailer's ring. But that doesn't take the place of going to the Knox box and getting the keys from there. But they're not always going to have, as you guys can all attest to, they're not always going to have the recall key in there like they should. So try a phase 1 recall. Phase 1 recall could potentially override the glitch, bring all elevators in that bank down to floor level, and open the doors. The people walk out, everybody's happy. We're going to go over more phase 1, phase 2 recall during the high-rise major emphasis training, so I'm not going to get into it a ton here. And then the next step is rebooting the system. The mechanics don't like when they do this. The mechanics don't like when we shut the mainline disconnect off at all. And the reason for that is no different than when we go to an automatic fire alarm and the business owner has already reset the system. We can't determine what detector went off. We can't determine what the problem is. This does the same thing to them. It reboots the system. It may erase their codes. It makes it a little more challenging for them to figure out what the problem was. But out in Vegas, I talked to the head or the head of the mechanics union and the lead inspector for Clark County, who deals with a lot more elevators than probably anyone else in the United States. And they said, yes, it makes our job more difficult, but do it every time because it protects you guys and then it protects the people that are in there. So they said, do it every time. And then, so once you do that, so we're going to reboot the system. So hopefully your DO or whoever has located and accessed the machine room, and they're getting ready to reboot the system. So they power it down, they wait 30 seconds. If you have not located the stall car yet, now is a great time to say, leave the power off, pop that hoistway door, visualize the stalled car. Again, be careful because you're opening exposed hoistway, and you can count the number of floors to where that stalled car is, or maybe they're they're stenciled onto the wall, the floor numbers, and visualize that stalled car, and say, okay, it's stuck between floor 5 and 6, and so we know that. Now you let the hoistway door close, you radio up, I'm ready to reboot the system, turn the power back on, hit that floor call button again. Because if you just power it up, it's not necessarily going to go anywhere. Hit that floor call button again and try to bring it down. And this I have seen some pretty good success with, the reboot of the system. Again, this is just a systematic approach. It's not going to work every time. It doesn't take the place of opening those hoistway doors and pulling those people out. It's just all this recall system or sequence can happen in a matter of minutes. But again, the limiting factor is going to be locating that hoistway or that machine room.
Kevin, do you do a phase 1 recall also, or you just hit the floor?
You can. While you're there, it doesn't hurt anything because again, it just takes a few seconds. After you do a reboot, hit the floor call button. If it doesn't work, it might take a few more seconds, but try that phase 1 recall again, and that could definitely help, because all we're doing is hitting Control-Alt-Delete on the computer, or you have a problem with any electronics, you turn it off, you turn it back on, and sometimes that fixes the problem. That's all we're doing here. If that doesn't work, we know now we're going to have to go into the rescue sequence. And so the rescue sequence, we know we're going to have to access that hoistway, open the hoistway door, and pull the people out. And so if that's the case, we're going to radio up to our driver operator, okay, shut down the mainline disconnect and lockout tagout. So at the end of the day, or at the end of the class, you guys, the engine companies, truck companies already have these, are going to get these fancy lockout tagouts. And so this can go directly on the mainline disconnect, or if it's a little more challenging, or if you've got multiple locks that need to go on there to switch out, if the mechanic's going to stay on scene and you want to leave this for them to lock out, tag out, you can lock it through this clasp. And so I know you guys don't have enough things on your 90-pound jailer's ring, so I'm going to give you guys a few more things to put on there. And it's going to make it a real nice wind chime. So you guys, before you leave, grab FEOK1, a lockout, tagout, and a clasp. And then those are going to be part of your elevator rescue equipment. So you've radioed up to your DO, shut it down, lockout, tagout. If they can't lock out, tag out, then there needs to be continuous firefighter presence. Because if we have a car stalled on the 5th floor at Park Lane, and we're in there working, we shut the mainline disconnect off, we're in there working on the 5th floor, and then the building maintenance guy shows up because he's got a phone call that there's a stalled elevator. He goes up to the machine room because he's not going to go floor by floor to try to locate us. He's going to go straight to the machine room, try to troubleshoot the problem, and he might say, oh, no wonder this doesn't have power, that's why it's not working, and flip the power back on while we're operating in there. So lockout, tagout, or continuous firefighter presence. The nice thing about lockout, tagout is now it frees up that person to come down and assist with the rescue. I'm going to come back to that just real quick. So once you have lockout, tagout, once the power is secured, we're going to open the hoistway door. And again, I wish I could tell you the one way to do it, but there's not. It's going to be trial and error. And the best thing I can recommend doing is getting out in your district and training. Know the elevators that are tough. I know Durwood and Westfall are tough. I've picked those hoistway doors on occasion, and they're kind of tough. They've got a few challenges. They've got plugs in them. They've got a rod or with a tab on it that you have to try to interface with. They can be tough. And so hopefully we get enough practice up here today to where you guys are comfortable doing it. But again, this is just one style of interlocks that we're dealing with. Yes, sir.
When I was down at 1, we'd go out and play with elevators all the time, and what we would find is like some of the functions were not working. And so I think that freaks people out because they feel like, I don't want to go out and break an elevator, but when you come across something like that, it's good. You're finding problems within the system ahead of time before when you might need to use it. So I agree, get out there and play with as many elevators in your area as possible.
Exactly. And Gino brings up a good point. When we do find stuff like that, we need to get a mechanic out there so that we're not back out there performing a rescue shortly thereafter. Because again, as I mentioned before, these are highly reliable machines. I mean, they can go thousands or hundreds of thousands of trips without failing. So when they do fail, we need to have a mechanic there. So I'll talk about it during the termination of the incidents, but we need to make sure to get a mechanic there. The other thing I'll advise you to do is go to a building that has multiple elevators. Try not to go to the building, don't go to Oak Brook where there's one elevator that everybody uses, and make contact with that building official and say, hey, is it cool if we take your elevator out of service for an hour or something and just play with it? And usually they're more than happy to oblige. So once you pick that, so you're going to pick the proper key, you're going to insert it into the escutcheon tube, you may lift, you may turn, but you need to put a little bit of pressure on that hoistway door. And so that as you disengage that interlock, it's going to slide open. What you don't want to do, because we tend to do it, is we start to pull that door open, and all you're going to do is bind your interlock up, and you're never going to get that door open. So it's a finesse game. You're going to have to open it or put a little bit of pressure so that when you pick it, you can open it, but not so much pressure that you're binding up the interlock. And the same thing is true with the restrictor, and we'll go over all of that up there. So, forceful entry. I'm not going to take this off the table. I know some of us in here have some experience with that, but it's a last resort. That's why we take our irons in. That's why we may end up needing to use spreaders and stuff like that. If we've exhausted all these other options, forceful entry is on the table. Contrary to the elevator mechanics' beliefs, this is not our go-to move. They think that when they see us carry our irons in, that we're going to force them to do it. And that's not the case. And the reason it's not the case is because we're here for property conservation as well. But life safety overrides that. So these hoistway doors, or all the components of the elevators are really, especially the hoistway doors, are pretty flimsy. All they are is they're like bypass doors that are on your closet, and I know we've all slid them and they've dislodged and all that stuff. They're just on rollers on a track. They're pretty flimsy material, but they're very expensive. So as soon as we take tools to them, we're causing thousands of dollars worth of damage. But there's cases where it's absolutely justified. That is going to be our last resort. It's going to be tough. They're tough, although they're flimsy. Those interlocks are tough, and that's what we're trying to overcome when we force these doors. So I'm going to go back real quick to this slide and just talk about the tools list. I don't expect Engine 3, when they roll into the summit, to bring all of these tools up, but these are just some things to think about. I know a lot of the firefighters on non-fire calls, they don't carry their radios, medical calls and what have you. They're not in the habit of carrying their radios. On these calls, everybody needs to have a radio because you're going to be operating multiple people on different floors and that need to be in communication. So you're going to have your radios. Bring your irons up because you may need them to gain access into the not the hoistway. You may need them to gain access in the hoistway, but you might need them to gain access into the machine room, because not every Knox box is going to have a key to the machine room. Not every elevator equipped building is going to have a Knox box. You may need to gain access to the machine room that way, or on your jailer's ring there is a shove knife as well, and that's what that's designed for. Most of these locks are pretty easy to overcome for machine rooms. It's not a highly secured machine room, but it is required to be locked. Flashlights. Hoistways are dark, dingy, dirty, scary places, so you're going to want to have flashlights to illuminate and see what you're doing. Lockout tagout set you're going to have with you already, because it's going to be on your jailer's ring along with your hoistway door keys. If you show up with that stuff, I would say you got all your bases covered. Now, as the incident progresses, you may find that you need a New York hook or a pipe pull for pulling, and we're going to demonstrate pulling, or at least discuss pulling when we get here. And that's just manipulating the interlock using a pipe pull or a New York hook or whatever it is. You might want some of these ladders. So if if this does evolve into a true car top rescue, you're going to need an attic ladder to go from the rooftop hatch into the hoistway. You're going to need a roof ladder to go from the top of the hoistway out into the lobby. And you may need a small step ladder. A small step ladder is going to be the most common thing. If the elevator is stalled 2 feet below the floor, like we'll do here, you're going to find that getting those people up and out is going to be a lot easier if you have a step ladder in there for them. And so those are just some tools to consider while you're doing this. All right, so removing the passengers. I'm not going to read this all to you. This is verbiage directly out of the ASME 17.4 Guide for Elevator Rescue, and those are what what is the doctrine that governs elevator rescue. There's no NFPA standard or anything like that. The American Society of Mechanical Engineers is the governing body over all things elevator. The one thing I will talk about, because I already skipped it, is the roof ladder. So if the car is stalled right here, and we have an exposed hoistway, a roof ladder is really nice to protect that hoistway. Lay it on its beam and protect the hoistway. These have all the guidelines in there, 3 feet here, 3 feet there. What I am a bigger fan of, because we're all good at it, is just using your common sense. If the elevator is stalled here, the bottom of the elevator is here, and I've got 5 foot of exposed hoistway here, it might be more beneficial to take them out on the floor above. So just use that common sense. If the elevator is stalled with this much room through the top, and I can't get them out through the top safely, it might be better to take them out below, protecting a hoistway. If the elevator, like these floors, are super wide floors, and so you have the potential for the elevator to be stalled with this much room in the top and this much room in the bottom with an exposed hoistway, sometimes the best thing we can do, and it's tough for me to say, and I know it's tough for us to do, is do nothing. Because when wait for the mechanics. If there's no issue, most of these are not true emergencies. It's people stuck inside of a box. Yes, they're uncomfortable, yes, they're scared, but it's probably not a true emergency. The best thing we can do in some instances, which is a tough pill to swallow, is nothing. And wait for the mechanics to get there. Once the mechanics get there, they can get on top of the car and they can drive that car wherever they want. They can put it right at floor level. Those people can walk out and be completely happy. The thing with that is reassure those people. It's just like an extrication. They have no idea what the heck's going on, so you need to reassure them. Say, hey, the mechanics are going to be here in 15 minutes. You're safe. The power shut off the elevator. Don't worry, it's not going to plummet to the bottom of the pit. Do you guys need water? Are you hot? Whatever it is, and just reassure them and wait till the mechanic gets there. And so all of these guidelines are in this PowerPoint. They're also in the ASME guide if you Google ASME 17.4. All right. So there are a few techniques. Sorry, I meant to change the slide a little bit. But there are a few techniques that are a little more intensive that we might want to wait till an elevator technician gets on scene. Pulling, I've since and we'll go over that and why it's a pretty safe operation as long as the main line disconnects off. Entering the hoistway in any way, just like anything, as soon as you cross from that as soon as you cross the threshold of that hoistway door, you're obviously exposing yourself to more danger than you are on the other side of it. And so you can do that, but do it knowing that what the inherent risks are and take the precautions to do that. Removing passengers through the car top emergency exit. This is a bear. To do it right, it's going to be labor intensive, because you guys will see in this hoistway, and this hoistway is way better than most. There is a ton of trip hazards. There's extreme fall hazards and all that. So really, if we're operating in that hoistway, people need to be tethered, they need to be harnessed, they need to be secured, and the people coming out of the passengers coming out of the rooftop, they have to be secured as well, because the last thing we want to do is get them out onto the rooftop and then have them again plummet 50 feet to their demise. And so if this is the instance and it's just people stuck in the car, maybe we wait till the technician's on scene. And again, use your common sense. If the system's going nuts and a technician's 3 hours out and it's going to be more time efficient and all that to get them out through the car top, do it. I'm not telling you not to do it. Just know these precautions going into it, and because you'll see in this hoistway how it poses hazards. If you are in the car top, or if you are entering the hoistway and you have cars operating on any side of you, secure the power to those as well, because there's counterweights, there's all the stuff in there that's moving, there's sharp things and all of that stuff that poses hazards to us. So we just want to mitigate those. And moving an elevator is the last thing I'll talk about. Drifting an elevator. Drifting a traction elevator is cool, but it's totally sketchy. And it's not a real controlled thing. And so to drift a traction elevator, you have to physically, and it takes a lot of force, remove the brakes off of the drum to allow the traction elevator to travel up. It can be done relatively controlled, but it is a finesse thing, and it takes a lot of force, and it overrides every safety system that's inherent in the elevators. And so, but drifting a traction elevator a hydraulic elevator can be done safely, and that's one that our main risk there is damaging equipment, because if we lower the car too far, we can damage equipment big time. If we don't have the hoistway doors closed completely, we can rip off the interlocks off of the back of the hoistway. So we can damage equipment, but it's just like any of the calls we run, it's a risk-benefit analysis. If someone's having a heart attack in there, it's stuck in between floors, and I need to get it down now, I'm 100% comfortable with you guys going to the reservoir, bleeding off the hydraulic fluid, bringing that down to car level and getting that person out. If it's just people trapped in an elevator and they can wait 15 minutes, I would be more comfortable with you waiting till a mechanic arrives on scene. All right, so this is the last slide, I promise, and then we're gonna go get a play. The OD changes. So these are some of the OD changes that we've already identified and noticed that there needs to be some changes or some updating. Most of it's just tweaking to fall in line with what we're doing now. We'd like a building size up, because I know that oftentimes, engine 3 arrives on scene and all you hear is engine 3's on scene. Scott would never do that, but on other shit, no. But what we want is a building size up, size, height, type, and then you establish command. And what that does for us, if Scott arrives on scene, or Daron better, is if he arrives on scene of Parkline, says, I'm on scene of a 12-story senior housing facility, a large 12-story senior housing facility, this is going to be house command. What that does is a truck company and safety officer coming in is, hey, I know it's a traction elevator, somebody's going to the penthouse. I know it's a senior living facility, so people are reliant upon these elevators, and there's probably elderly people in those elevators. And then now I know who's in charge, because where that comes into play is these specific tasks. So we just try to make this fall more in line with, oops, that's not what I want, with the rest of the tech rescue OD. And so there's your arrival approach. So specific tasks. There's companies that aren't running a lot of these calls, and they don't know the most efficient way to utilize their people. So the way the OD is kind of written, and the way that I envision it happen, is the officer will send one member to locate and access the machine room, one member to make passenger contact, and then when the truck company arrives on scene, they're going to face-to-face with that incident commander, which is typically going to be the engine officer, and they're going to send people to the floors where they need to be. If it's stalled at floor level, everybody can go to the floor and stall that. If it's stalled in between floors, the truck company will send 2 above, 2 below, and will effect the rescue. The last one that we've identified, I just outlined this, or highlight this in red just to reiterate it. It's always been a shall and I know you guys can all read that, so I don't need to read to you, but it's always been a shall. The mainline disconnect shall be put in the off position prior to performing the rescue sequence. Oh. And then the last one is just safety considerations. So PPE has been a big one. People are like, what do we wear on these calls? It's a tech rescue call, so tech rescue equipment is fine. Helmet, gloves, long sleeve shirt, pants, steel-toed boots. If you have your turnouts on, you got all your bases covered. The only downside to turnouts is if this turns into more of a technical rescue, you're entering the hoistway, you've got more snag hazard, it's uncomfortable in a harness and all that stuff, but not an issue, nothing that we can't overcome. And then the last one is obviously the safety officer on these true rescues is going to play an integral role. They're going to ensure that hoistway is protected, that people are secured entering the hoistway and things of that nature. So those are the things that we've already identified to fall in line with kind of what our practices are department-wide. And if there's anything else, by all means, shoot me an email or give me a call, and we'll get this fired back over to the OD committee. Any questions? All right, sorry, we're going longer than I wanted, but I want to get up there and get some hands-on stuff done. So if you guys don't have any questions, grab your helmets, your gloves, and we're going to head up. We'll go about half of you go up. Actually, there's 2 elevators, so we all can go up to the 4th floor. We went to a call. I was on engine 1 at Westfall, and elevator was stuck on the 5th floor. And so pretty basic elevator call. We show up on scene. Mike Marr, who's a technician with Thyssen Krupp, was walking back to his pickup, and I'm like, hey Mike, are you here for the stalled elevator at Westfall? And he goes, no, I'm working on the elevators over in Durwood. And I'm like, oh, well, there's a car stalled here on the 5th floor. And he goes, oh, okay, I'll come up with you. So against my better judgment, we went up, and we went to the floor because we knew these 2 gals were stuck on the 5th floor. So we walk up there, and Mike is like, oh, I'll just go to the 6th floor and hit the car top stop, because that's what mechanics do, and that's their comfort zone, and I'm completely fine with that, but that's not our operations. So Mike goes up to a biparting door like this on the 6th floor, and I'm like, I'll go with you. And so I follow him up there, and he's legit. So he walks up to this door and literally puts his hand there, and within a matter of seconds has it picked with his intention to open that hoistway door and slap that car top stop. He opens it like this, opens that hoistway door, steps forward and looks, and his eyes get about that big and he goes, the car's at the lobby. And so just my assumption is that this hoistway door wasn't quite closed enough to engage the interlocks. And you'll see that sometimes. So a good practice is if you know they went in on the 5th floor and then they didn't move, those 5th floor hoistway doors might not have closed all the way. So you can walk up to them and shake them like that and ensure that that interlock is engaged, and it may return to normal operations. Grit and grime and stuff gets built up in this track, and it just may be enough not to let those hoistway doors close all the way. I've seen a gum wrapper stuck in there, which didn't allow the hoistway door to close. As soon as you flick the gum wrapper out and close the doors together, it operated normally. And so that's yet another reason why we hit the mainline disconnect, because now that car, he steps forward, and his intent was to hit the car top stop, which I'll show you over here, and the car was 40 feet below us at that point. Now's the chance where we get to do hands-on stuff. So if I can have someone pick each of these doors. So these are circles, so you're going to use the circle escutcheon tube, so you're going to use your drop key on these. And so if we can get both of these doors open, and then whichever one opens first, I'll take half of you over there, and we're going to go over the components of that. So if someone wants to pick this one, we'll go over the components of which one opens first, and then we'll just flip-flop while you guys are practicing on the other one. So, and these ones I'll tell you, like a boss.
Was that
That was nice.
You're already losing that one.
All right, so these
We don't
ones.
even have elevators in our What's up?
So what this one allows me to do is show you. So if you guys, just about half of you, the other half can keep practicing on that door. Just remember, it's only an hour and a half long class. So, all right. So you guys have opened the Randy.
Well, it's gonna be opposite.
no?
Yeah. It's going to be somewhere along this top header because that's where the door closes. If it's biparting doors, it's going to be somewhere near the middle. It's going to look like a little tab that goes, typically a little tab that goes into a keeper. And so find your resistance. Just find out what's holding me up. It may be up here, but find out what if the car's up there. And so I know that this is what's holding me up. And so this is the restrictor here. That's what's holding me up. This one's obvious. I put it at eye level so you can see it. But you can physically manipulate that restrictor and open your hoistway doors. The other thing you can do is picture how this system works. So we know that on the back of this door is those pickup rollers. They interface with this clutch right here, and then when the car door opens, because it's the one with the motor on it, those pickup rollers, that's why they're called pickup rollers, will hit that clutch to disengage the restrictor so that they all open together. So if I can trace the system back, having a good understanding of how the system works, I can troubleshoot this. And so if I look here, I know those pickup rollers are going to hit the back shoe, right? It doesn't do them any good to hit that front shoe. They're going to hit the back shoe and they're going to slide it open. Not every car is going to be this way. Not every restrictor is going to be this way. I'm sure you've seen, like I told you, remember I told you take a mental snapshot of that rod and that clutch? They're going to be down here. And I'm sure we've all seen people smack that clutch and then the restrictor breaks loose. And not all the time, it doesn't work all the time, so you smack it harder, right? And so, but if you understand the systems, you know why that works. It smacks it, it hits that relating rod, and it disconnects the restrictor. The more surefire way of doing it is finding that relating rod, the gold rod that I told you guys to take a mental snapshot of. It's typically going to be on your back shoe, and you're going to take that rod and lift it up, or pull it down, or take that clutch, that back shoe, and push it back or push it in. And you're going to have a lot more success than just willy-nilly smacking it. And so just tracing the system back, having a good understanding of how that works will make you successful on this. The other thing that you want to do is make sure that the people aren't inside trying to pull these doors apart, because again, now I'm not going to be able to get that restrictor out if there's force on it. Make sure your firefighters aren't pushing on that, trying to force it. You want to bring that back to a neutral position so that the pressure's off your restrictor. Locate your resistance. Okay, there it is. And now either physically manipulate it here or figure out mechanically how it works. Push here, lift the rod, pull the rod, and like I said, I wish I could tell you how to do it every time, but every one of them is different. So
what's the purpose of the catch on the right?
What's that?
On this one?
It's the keeper for the pickup rollers.
Oh, it just traps them?
Yeah, it traps them in there. So. Cool, any questions on that? All right. Here's kind of textbook in my mind and kind of how the OD is written on how a call should run. And so we'll say engine 3's first on, and they know where the passenger is. And so engine 3 gets called to the summit. We know the passenger is stuck on the between the 3rd and 4th floors. And so engine 3 arrives on scene. They're on scene of a 4-story multi-family housing, and they're going to be Prospect Command. And so, all right, it's not all Prospect, but it's not the summit?
It's state now.
Oh, okay, my bad. And so they arrive on scene. The first in officer, if they're familiar with the building, they know where the car is, sends their DO to the machine room, locate and access the machine room, the firefighter to the to make contact with the passengers in the car. So the firefighter might be going to the 4th floor. The DO is going to go locate and access the machine room, and then while the officer is in the lobby, they can hit the floor call button. If there's multiple elevators in there, by all means, send your firefighter and DO to find that stuff utilizing those elevators. They hit the floor call button, try it. Give it a few seconds. If the floor doesn't, or if the elevator doesn't recall to the floor, try it phase 1. And so try a phase 1 recall, give it a few seconds. If that doesn't work, we know we're going to go to a reboot. And now if the firefighter's up at the floor level with the passengers, they can attempt to ensure that that door is closed all the way. And so we're going to call for a reboot. You radio up, say they hopefully are in the machine room already. They can reboot the system. If you don't know where the car is at this time, now's a good time. The officer's still in the lobby. They can pop the hoistway door, visualize where that car is, let it close, power the system back up, and hit the floor call button. If that doesn't bring the elevator back down, now we know we're going to go into the rescue sequence. We've located the stalled car, we know where the passengers are, and we've made contact with them. Now your truck company is arriving on scene. We know it's stuck between the 3rd and 4th floors, and so you tell your truck company, give me 2 on the 4th floor, give me 2 on the 3rd floor. Your DO's done lockout, tagout. Now they can come down and assist you. Once you get those hoistway doors open, you determine what the best means of getting the patients extricated or the passengers extricated are. You get them out, you leave that mainline disconnect off, you ensure that if there's not a elevator mechanic on scene or en route, that we get one en route. And if we don't know who it is, we can look at the controller. Typically the service contract will have who services that on the controller itself. We can contact them, the number's on the back of your card. If we have no idea who the service provider is, we can grab the car and we can put the push for help button. That will contact us directly to the dispatch of the service provider. They'll know the address. You tell them what you have and that you need a mechanic out there. If you guys feel that you can securely lock that machine room and that no one's going to turn the power back on to that elevator. We tag it out of service. No one's going to turn the power back onto that elevator. And we're back in 15 minutes doing another rescue. Then you can leave it that way. If you're not sure of it and you want to leave your lockout tag out, by all means leave your lockout tag out equipment there with a note for the mechanic. When the mechanic gets there, you're going to have to make another trip out there to get your equipment, but that ensures that no one powers that elevator back up and we're back there for a stalled elevator. And then we can leave. We're not going to get feedback from the mechanics on, yes, the elevator's fixed, here's the problem, anything like that. But we've done our due diligence to ensure that elevator is back in functioning. So, and hopefully avoid us coming back. Any questions on any of that?
Lockout, tag out, key to that padlock.
It should be in it.
So just leave it in there?
No, keep your key with you. Yeah.
Lockout, tag out.
Yeah, keep your key, take the key with you.
So we may have to go back then.
Yeah, if you do, but like I said, like here, I would be completely comfortable, because these closets are locked. I would be comfortable leaving it in the off position, shutting that door, locking it, and locking the pantry. No one's going to get in there other than CSU's elevator mechanics or CSU's inspectors to access it. No one, they shouldn't be in there. And so I'd be comfortable leaving it. If I'm at an apartment building and their building maintenance guy wants to get it back in service as soon as possible or whatever, they just want to turn it back on, I'd be like, no, let's get a mechanic here. I'm going to lock this out and leave my equipment on scene, knowing full well that I'm going to have to go back once the mechanic gets there and retrieve my equipment. So it's just one of those things where you're going to have, it's a judgment call. So any questions?
You know, when so when you recycle it, or you go through, you turn the power off with your 15 to 30 seconds and shut it back on, does it take another minute or anything like that to reboot after you've turned it back
No,
on?
it takes a
so
second.
We can go right away.
Yeah,
That's why you
I mean,
go right
give
away.
it a few seconds.
Right.
So we'll do it right now, actually, because I'm going to have Alan power this elevator, not the far one, power this one back up, and we'll see, because we have to use it to get down. So hopefully it works. So go ahead and power back up.
Okay. So I know it's just like a computer you turn off.
Yeah,
You gotta wait.
It works.
and then you go
No, it
right
doesn't.
away.
It doesn't.
Okay.
Reboot. So you'll see.
So this is kind of
We should be able to hear him power it back on.
He's not gonna be able to do it.
Oh, is that one locked out?
We'll lock that tag down.
See, that's locked. I locked it. I locked that one out. They must have locked this one out, which is good. It's a good practice. But this one we're going to leave stalled in that position all day. And so they tell you, I've heard mechanics say that powering it down fries the motherboard. I have personally heard it. I've heard people been told that by a mechanic. It's just like any other. So did he power it up?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep, so I've got my floor call button. It's probably it might return to the first floor and then come back up here, or it might come directly here, but I can hear it moving. So it's pretty instantaneous once you power it back up. These doors may open slow. Sometimes once you power it back up, it takes a second for it to get its wits about it, and the doors might open up slow. It's still operating normally. So make sure before you guys leave, get a lock with a key in it, your clasp, and your FEOK 1. So your drop key and your half moon key like this are the two most common. And so they've taken the drop key, we'll pretend like that's drop key. They've taken the drop key and the half moon key. They've put them on a single key ring together with a small carabiner that they clip onto the jailer's ring. Because I know it can be a pain working up here above your head with your drop key, trying to finesse that open with 90 pounds dangling down here. And so it's something that I've seen some engine companies do. It is a great idea. I had initially thought about getting those breakaway key rings, but I've had them personally and I know how well they work, and so I figure we'd be losing keys left and right if we did that, but that seems to be working good for everybody.